All right, you all. So maybe you all, like myself, just love those moments where you're coming out of a very confusing period in your life where maybe nothing makes sense. And as time goes on and you start to build on your experiences, you're able to put the pieces to the puzzle together and even start having epiphanies, making sense of everything, and realizing your experiences were divinely orchestrated to develop you into the person that you are becoming. I am realizing that I am having that exact moment right now. And what that epiphany is for me is that I've completely outgrown an identity that I've carried, if not for half of my life, maybe the whole thing. And that is the value of being needed and resourceful. It's something that I've wanted to feel in relation to people, and I equated that to being loved. And now that I have outgrown that identity, not even realizing I've outgrown that identity until recently, just figuring out who it is that I want to be moving forward. Do I want to feel needed, or do I want to feel loved? And what does that actually look like? You know, like I said, I've had this subconscious feeling about wanting to feel needed ever since maybe back to high school. High school has started as not wanting to be a burden. And that was because my mom passed away, and she passed away, and then I went on to live with extended family for the next 3 years until I went on to college. You know, and not only did my mom pass away when I was a baby, she also adopted me. You know, I am not technically blood related to the people I consider my family today. That gave me a hyper awareness once I did live with my extended family that I am not their child, let alone biological child. I don't want to be a burden. I still want to respect my mom and live in her legacy. So what I valued was keeping my head on straight, staying focused, getting through high school so I could ultimately get to college, move on with my life, and establish myself. Going back to high school, my senior year specifically, when I was applying for college, I based my college essay on being resilient. And I chose this as a topic for my college essay because, you know, I was told by my counselor that colleges want to hear about your adversity and how you overcame something to still be standing at this moment trying to go away to school. So I chose resilience because my mom passed away when I just entered high school. I was only in high school for maybe about 2 or 3 weeks, and then she passed. But it was such an interesting time because everyone says that high school are the most important years leading into your young adulthood because they kind of set the trajectory for you. So because we are Americans and based on, you know, how the system is set up, there's no space for grief. So I talked about how my mom passed away and I basically stayed strong throughout the whole thing. And I really valued that in myself. I remember after my mom passed away, I maybe stayed out of school for 5 days. I went to her funeral on the 5th day. The next day, I wanted to go back to school. And I remember hearing by the end of the day from some people that some other kids were talking about me because they knew my mom passed away, but they were confused about how I came to school the next day and I was still smiling. And I thought that was so interesting because I was like, well, what else do y'all want me to do? Do you want me to cry all day at school? Like, I cry at home. And like, there's nobody, I didn't have siblings that I experienced her passing with. So yeah, I felt like it was a deeply personal experience, but I knew that I still had to keep moving forward. I had two choices. I could either choose to let my mother's death basically deteriorate me. And I know she didn't want that. I know she wanted me to go on and live a full life. So in her legacy, that's what I chose to do. So no, I wasn't showing up to school sad. I was going to keep going, but not realizing that I am building a very particular sense of self, and not saying it was wrong for me not to fully grieve, but I just, like I said, I did not have time. I did not fully grieve my mother's death until I got to college and I realized the gravity of like, wow, my slow support system is gone. And all I really have is myself. So my need to not feel like a burden eventually turned into wanting to feel needed or resourceful. Due to the cards that I have been dealt, I always felt like I have had to work for connections. And now most people might say, well, everybody does. And that's true. But like, I don't even have a default nuclear family. That's what I mean. And that fact has kind of perpetuated itself throughout my adulthood. After my mom passed away, my life became very transient for the following 15 years. It's like I started at one high school after her passing. I was at a different high school. And then I left there, went to college, didn't like the school that I chose in that first year. So I decided to transfer to another school. And then towards the end of my schooling there, right before I was about to graduate, I studied abroad. Then I came back home. I graduated. I left that city, moved back home, pursued teaching and teaching internationally. And that transpired into all of my 20s being colored by travel. And anytime I was home, it was because I was prepping to travel again. Yeah, but I very much prided myself that all of my travels were mostly professionally oriented. Like, I was getting different jobs, teaching positions overseas. They were paying for it. And I would travel once I was in these places. So I have made a life out of having to be comfortable in my independence, but also working my way into different groups that have already been established, whether that is organizational groups based by organization, groups based on race, groups based on culture, groups of friends that are already made. And then here I come with my transient self trying to be in a group, I don't know, or have a friend. But I realized in doing that, I was never actively participating in choosing people in my life. I was passively allowing it to happen. And it's not until now that I realized that was a subconscious thing that I was doing. And I was doing it because I was always approaching my relationships from a deficit. I had experienced so much loss and confusion in childhood that, I was just accepting people, whomever would come my way, who was like, mostly nice to me. We had good conversations. They enjoyed conversing with me as well. They would self-disclose with me. I would self-disclose with them. And then I was just like, yeah, we're friends. Like, it was pretty much that simple. Another thing that I've realized with the people I'm not actively participating in choosing them, all of our relationships were playing out in one of a few ways. It's always the same pattern. And I could apply this to my family, to friendships, and romantic relationships. But consistent comments that I've heard is, wow, you're so strong. How do you do that? Or, wow, you're so grounded and level-headed. Or, I want to do what you're doing. Just, things like that. Or it was that people would call me for advice or like to help them solve their problems or to help talk them through something. So my resourcefulness was not based on like, oh, I do all of these things for people and I give the clothes off of my back until the point that I have nothing. Like, it was never that. I think it's just like my energy and how I present myself to people. People like it. But I equated people treating me in that way as being loved. But essentially what a lot of people did is that they were pedestalizing me. They were putting me up here to this point where it's like, okay, Brenalyn has all these things going on. We don't really see her crack. She has a lot of difficult cards dealt to her, but then she's also like done these things that most people haven't done. So people see me as like, I don't know, I got it going on. But like not seeing that like, I cry all the time, or like a lot of times I don't have people to talk to. Or the same way you guys ask me for help, I don't know who I could ask for help or for advice or something. So very isolating within itself. But what I realized about being put on a pedestal, I really don't like it. And I don't like it because I have seen the eventual and inevitable downfall of all of those relationships in which I've been pedestalized in. And it's like, as soon as I'm a human, which involves me having to say no to something or showing signs of weakness or making mistakes, I am not often offered grace, if ever. And I want to say this is more applicable in my closer relationships, but as soon as that moment happens where I'm not able to live up to the persona that I put out into the world, that relationship crumbles. And every time it's so devastating. And it made me realize that I cared more about the person or the relationship, and just see that I was something to be needed, or my energy was wanted. And then once it's no longer needed, it's like I get discarded. It's a very tough realization to have, but it's hard to not have it because it's been happening for so long that I can't unsee it. And it's really teaching me that being needed or resourceful is not the same as being loved. That is just what I'm leaning into today. So because I've outgrown this identity of wanting to be needed, it's like things or my relationships just look so different for me. Another part of me wanting to be resourceful is that I have also taken a lot of pride in developing my professional skill set over the years. Anything that I've had as a hobby, I've turned it into something, I've monetized it basically. And I would say that first started with my career. I am a school teacher. I teach young children. I have been doing that for ever since I've had a job. Despite even the shortcomings of being a teacher, I do enjoy my job because I realized a long time ago what my purpose is, and that is of teaching. And not necessarily teaching kids, just that is how I interact with the world, being a role model, or, showing people the how-to of how to do something, or how to organize their lives in ways that works for them. As of now, I live out my purpose through teaching children. Then I also went on to develop the skill set of becoming a yoga instructor. My hobbies or interests overall are health and wellness. I have also been able to sell the juices that I make. So the juices that I make online, and I show them from time to time, I actually sell them to people in my community. It's been going pretty consistent. I'm really proud to say that my skill set has gotten to a point that almost everybody I have interacted with in my life, and I mean literally everybody, has been a patron of mine in one way or the other. Whether that's because you need somebody to teach your kids, or because you want to go down the health and wellness avenue and you want to take yoga classes, or maybe you just want to do a detox and you want one of my juices. Everybody has supported me in that way, but it really has increased my self-esteem because I realize the same things that people have wanted or have admired from me that I have completely monetized and support my lifestyle off of. So when I take that out of the equation, my resourcefulness, what does it mean to be loved or really respected? Not pedestalized, but respected. And people want me around not because of what I can do for them, or how I make them feel when they're around me, but literally because you just like being around me. It's just so interesting being here because now that I've outgrown this identity, I have been spending a lot more intentional time in solitude. And I realized I've never really had a system for vetting people. It's just, like I said, I just accept people. I let them need me in one way or the other. And when I say need, it's not like I'm super generous and I just give people the clothes off of my back and until I have nothing. I think it's an energetic thing. I think people like to be around me. I think they like to take certain ways and approaches that I have and apply it to their own lives. And yeah, once I take all of those things back for myself, I'm like, wow, I don't really have a method for what is it that I really want in a friend? What is it that I want in a romantic partnership without feeling like I'm up here and people that are down here always kind of looking up to me or needing guidance in some way. So I want to say, I guess the opposite of being needed or resourceful is being useless. I don't want to say that I want to practice uselessness because that's not the goal either. I am keeping a lot of energy for myself, being intentional about it, protecting myself, and just realizing that access to me is a gift. It's definitely a reckoning because, when I think about how my past relationships have played out, especially the ones that I have felt discarded in, I could be mad at these people, but then I reflect and I'm like, what is it that I have done that I continuously show up in the world this way and everybody kind of treats me very similarly. Like it all comes back to me. And as I think back to all of these interactions and relationships, I realized that I was in relationship survival mode for a very good portion of my life. The misconception for myself is that I was no longer in survival mode after I fully established myself professionally and I was able to live the lifestyle that I wanted, not realizing that I was approaching my relationships at a deficit and just wanting to be around whomever chose me because, I don't know, I'm just so used to doing life on my own. I want to be a more active participant as far as choosing people. More so this year, I've been watching how if I don't continue to be the person that someone needs, they like, bye. So as I begin to define what this looks like for me, I don't really know as far as, my relationships, because at this moment, feel so strong and confident in myself that I'm just really comfortable with myself. And I also acknowledge that we live in a society where being transactional, that's actually the basis of a lot of relationships. Like the same way that I wanted to feel needed, that's good. But like, it's okay for me to need another person and we have like a mutual thing going on. I never just want it to be one-sided. And that's often what it has been. It's one-sided, like people need me and not necessarily that I don't need them, but it's like I'm on this pedestal up here. So, a question that I've often had is who teaches the teacher? Because I feel like I'm always that person teaching, but like, I don't know, other than like some people online, who can teach me. So it makes me want to lean into mentorship maybe, or if I have to provide value to those mentors, like that's great, that's fine. But yeah, just trying to figure out what that means for my relationships. That is a journey. I'm continuously living it. So what about you all? How do you differentiate between being needed and being loved? And at what point did you realize that you didn't want to live this way anymore? We continue living out our answers to our questions every day. So I'm interested to hear what you all think, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.